what is TypeScript?
Right. So TypeScript is, well, it's a superset of the JavaScript language. So it's still plain old JavaScript. You can write plain JavaScript exactly as you're writing today in .js files. But instead of using .js as the file extension, you change it to .ts, which is TypeScript. And what this does is it then gives the TypeScript, which is the TypeScript compiler, which is a thing that will process the language. But you might be familiar with other sorts of compiler-esque aspects to JavaScript, like Babel, if you wanted to use features that are not supported in all JavaScript runtimes, you want to convert them down to something that works everywhere. The similar idea with TypeScript. We can take our superset of the JavaScript language, being TypeScript, which allows us to do type annotations. Say we know that something's always going to contain a number, so we explicitly state that it can only contain a number. So if we would ever try and assign a string to that variable, which is perfectly legitimate JavaScript, you can convert something from a number to a string inside of the same variable. Well, the TypeScript compiler will say, "Hang on a sec, are you sure you wanted to do that?" and give you an error. But this kind of compiler safety, being able to understand the data types that we're working with, the shapes of objects, means that as we build out more and more complex applications, we can understand how data is being used in that application, what the shape of that data is, and then make sure that we're using it the way that it was intended to be used. We're not passing a number where we were expected a string, or a function when instead of we wanted an object, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things. Like the great part about JavaScript is that it lets you do whatever it is that you want to do, and just trust that you know what it is that you're talking about. And of course, the bad thing is that it will let you do whatever it is that you want to do, and trust that you know what you're talking about. And yeah, I very rarely, if ever, know what it is that I'm talking about. So yeah.
Yeah.
One of the other things I really like about TypeScript, and you touched on it a bit with Babel, is it also then helps smooth over some of the edges when it comes to JavaScript. That I've been in web dev for about as long as you have, and if you would have told me back then that we'd be doing the things with JavaScript that we're now doing with them today, I'd have looked at you like you had three heads. Like it's just not possible. And in a lot of ways, it's like it's still sort of not, that we are using JavaScript in a lot of ways it wasn't designed for, but TypeScript really does help smooth out some of those edges.
Sure. And it just makes it a lot easier to build, or at least in my experience, it's made it a lot easier to build applications that are a lot more complex, that might have larger dev teams that are working across them. Some things like that is where I find TypeScript really makes its value proposition strong. It might not be right if you're just a single person working on an application that's got half a dozen files. There's definitely value. I'll still do it that way. But if you're working in a team and you've got people that are working on different shared components, or they're working on different service layers, even like you could build a client and server application. So where you've got like a Node.js backend and a React front end, being able to share the data types between those, so that you know that when you're doing a call to a REST endpoint or to a GraphQL endpoint, here is the shape of the data that you're getting back. And we've just got that same set of types shared back and forth. So we can enforce that the client respects what the server is sending, and vice versa.
100%. Like the way that I try to convince everybody that they should be using TypeScript is just let me create this interface for you and then show you how this works. Like that ability to be able to define those types and be able to share them is such a huge thing, and it makes you so much more productive, because then you don't have to stop and remember. It's like, okay, did I call it user? Did I call it username? Did I call it user ID? And if I called it user ID, was it lowercase ID? Was it capital I, lowercase d? Like you don't have to worry about any of that, because the interface, the type will tell you what that is.